Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. With regular visits from Audubon conservation biologist Mark Labar to learning about the Vermont 4-H embryology program from the Chicken Lady, Across the Fence is definitely for the birds. Today, we're continuing that trend with the author of Birding to Change the World, published by HarperCollins. It's a newly published memoir by a senior lecturer at UVM Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources, Trish O'Kane. Vermont author and environmentalist Bill McKibben writes about birding to change the world, not just a delightful story about but a powerful one, showing how we can open doors into the natural world and hence into the fight to defend it. Birds as teachers, a wonderful idea. Trish O'Kane joins me to talk about her career as an educator, her life as an accidental ornithologist, and her previous life as an investigative journalist. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Jolio. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And can you tell me a little bit how this book came to be?
Well, it's really the story of how to recover from a disaster and find a new joyful path forward. The story starts in New Orleans. Well, it starts in Vermont with my class that I teach here, Birding to Change the World, where I pair our students as mentors with kids in Flynn Elementary School in the New North End. So it starts there, but then it flips back, goes back in time. How did I get here? Kind of story. And it starts with Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. I was living in New Orleans teaching journalism at Loyola University when Katrina hit. Our home and our neighborhood was destroyed. I was a human rights investigative and civil rights journalist. I had no environmental background, but Katrina really forced me to think about climate change and what was coming, and that led to Birding to Change the World.
And in an op-ed in the New York Times from years ago, you told the Sparrow Story, which you also tell in this book here. What's the story?
Right. Well, that was, birders have something called their first bird, and that's the first bird that you really connect with. Not just recognize, but that you feel an affinity with, and you don't forget that moment. And for me, it was actually a cardinal in New Orleans. I moved back to New Orleans to teach 4 months after the hurricane. Half the city was still in ruins, stinky. It was really, really horrible. And I woke up the first morning and I heard silence. I mean, I'm in a major city and you wake up in the morning and you don't hear traffic and you don't hear people. And I realized it's because a lot of the people are never coming back or they haven't come back yet. And then 1,400 people drowned. So I was sad and I was lying there in bed and then I heard a clicking outside the window. And I looked outside the window and it was a cardinal in a bush. And I knew it was a cardinal, but I'd never been so happy to see just something alive. And from there I started watching the sparrows in my yard. I put up feeders in New Orleans and started watching house sparrows every day before work. Didn't know what they were, didn't know anything about them. It just relaxed me and it made me laugh. And I felt so happy. There's something alive in the city. Animals that survived the hurricane, surrounded by so much death and destruction and sadness, it really lifted my spirits before I went to teach every day. So that's how cardinals, sparrows, what we call common birds, helped me heal and begin to teach ornithology eventually.
So in a large way, this started with a way to handle grief.
Yes, it's definitely a way to handle grief story, because right after Katrina hit and we learned our house was destroyed, my mother called me from California to tell me my dad was dying of stomach cancer and he had less than a year to live. So, I mean, this happens to a lot of people that go through disasters, like look at COVID, right? You get a double whammy. You get someone in your family gets COVID and you lose your job. I mean, many people can relate to this story. That's what happened to me. House is destroyed, neighbors are drowned, my dad is dying. And so grappling with all that, but it was my father actually who showed me the way forward. He had feeders. And as he was dying of cancer, he could sit and watch the birds at his feeders. And when I was in New Orleans and very distressed and trying to teach and my students were so distressed, I thought, man, I need something. Maybe there's something to this bird thing. And my dad, this is helping him live the rest of his life with some joy every day, no matter how sick he is or the chemo treatments. Maybe I should try this, and that's really how it started.
Yeah, that's a beautiful origin story. And you've been you've been teaching this class. You teach it now at UVM, but before you taught it at Wisconsin-Madison. So
Yes.
how long have you been teaching it? How has it evolved over the years?
Right. So the class, so after New Orleans, I moved to Madison to get a PhD in environmental science. And that was a wild leap. I had zero science background, and I tell about that leap in the book because I was 45 years old. But I realized that I wanted to understand, Joleel, what had happened, right? Like, what's a wetland? We were living on a filled-in wetland. So we moved to Madison, and we moved across the street from Warner Park, and that story is in here, Madison's largest urban park. And I started studying the birds, and I took ornithology. In the middle of all this, I discovered that this gorgeous place with a wetland, it's a wetland park, with 141 species of birds that I discovered during my PhD, was threatened by a building plan and a clearing plan, and that's where the class came from. Because my husband and I and neighbors started fighting that plan, and the city councilor said to me, well, you're a graduate student, we don't have any environmental education programs in this park. Why don't you do something? And that story's in here. And so that's how the class started. It started to meet a very concrete community need in that neighborhood I lived in Madison. And the model worked, it's still working. And so when I came to UVM, Rubenstein School was interested in that model of community-based teaching, and so I replicated it here. And now it's in its 8th year here, but I started it in 2010 in Madison.
And what does that community-based teaching look like at UVM instead of in Wisconsin?
Well, it's very similar to the Wisconsin model. I'm smiling because I was just out Wednesday with the kids and my college mentors who are absolutely fabulous. It's the joy of my life. My favorite days of the week are Mondays and Wednesdays because that's when I'm with my students. So what it looks like is Mondays we meet as a class on campus or in a place close to campus to go birding. And I teach my students birding skills, and we also have a discussion, always outside usually, the class is mostly taught outside, about what we're going to do Wednesday with the kids. And they have a series of readings on environmental justice, social justice, environmental education, and also ornithology. But the class has a very strong environmental justice focus because we're working with kids who are not getting outside enough, and it's affecting their mental health. And these are kids at Flynn Elementary School in my neighborhood. So Monday's the birding class with my students, and we talk about, the readings. And Wednesday, from 2 to 5, we go to Flynn Elementary and run, a lot of running, walk 3 miles with the kids from the school to Derway, which is a marshy, beautiful peninsula area where the Winooski River meets Lake Champlain, and that's our outdoor classroom. So we do that every Wednesday, rain or shine. We were out Wednesday, got totally soaked. The kids just had a fabulous time.
Are the birds out when it's pouring rain?
Not many, they don't fly much in the wind, but we did still see a few birds. But the main purpose is the mentoring relationships and to get the kids outside for their mental and physical health. And then the science is woven into it. The kids right now are earning new binoculars thanks to a grant from Green Mountain Audubon. And they have to find 30 species. So many of the kids aren't interested in birds, to be honest with you. They're interested in their college student. They love, and they say, my college student. But now that there's the incentive of these binoculars for them to own and take home, not just borrow, they're becoming much more interested in birds.
And how did this idea of having college students work with younger kids, how did that come about?
Well, again, it started in Madison because when the city councilor said to me, we don't just complain about things and try to stop a plan, we could use some help. And I said, okay. I went to UW Madison. I was had a research job and said I'd like to teach a class while I was a PhD student. And my PhD advisor, Jack Kloppenberg, who is an incredible environmental sociologist, helped me set it up. So we set up a class there. It was called Last Child in the Park, How Kids and Birds Can Save the Planet. That's from Richard Louve's wonderful book, Last Child in the Park. So there I taught the same thing, taught the class on campus and took the mentors every Wednesday, same day, to Sherman Middle School, which was a mile from Warner Park. So very similar, very, very similar.
And you used to be an investigative journalist, and I'm sure there are still many parts of that that are part of you. And how do you think that informed writing this book?
Oh, well, it really helped a lot because the book is a weave, it's a braid of science, personal story, and an activism story, and also teaching. It's a memoir, so you know my life as a writer and teacher and birder and community activist. The investigative journalism part helped a lot when I was in Madison, trying to figure out what was behind the city plan. And so, you know, as a community activist and trying to organize with my neighbors to protect the park, we had to know what's driving this. And what was driving it was economic injustice and the city's really good intentions to help a neighborhood where I lived that was struggling. And so the class became part of the solution. There were a lot of latchkey kids who had nothing to do after school, and we were giving them something positive to do after school. We were also introducing them to a university that was 5 miles away, and many of them, according to the city councilor and school principals, didn't even know the university existed. So we were bringing the university into the community, and that's the exact same thing I'm doing here, because Flynn Elementary is 5 miles away, and when I met the principal, 2 months after I moved here, I walked by the school with my dog, because I live there, and the principal, I went in to meet the principal, and he said, "Oh, you're from the university. We need a deeper connection to the university." And I told him about the Madison program, and he said, "That's a great idea, let's do it." And in January of 2016, we started. So that was just after I arrived here. There was an immediate need. We filled the need.
And do you have any favorite birds? Every birder does.
Well, I did a study on, that's the gray catbird right there, for my dissertation. The gray catbirds were nesting in Warner Park in a thicket that people wanted to cut down, and so I started studying them, and my advisor and I put geolocators on their backs and tracked them to Central America and Mexico, and then back to those same bushes in Madison, Wisconsin. So I just love the gray catbird.
Great, and a story to go with it too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome, Jaleel. It was a pleasure.
Birding to Change the World is available now. Find it wherever you get your books. We, of course, suggest you visit your local library and talk with your local librarian. And go out and see some birds. From all of us here on Across the Fence, thank you for watching. Have a good one.